All right, here we are in session 5 of RP445, Great Christian Thinkers. Today we're going to listen to a presentation by Josh Burt on the revival theology of the New Divinity Movement, Chapter 3. Chapter 4, Congregationalists and the New School Presbyterian Revival Theology of the Second Great Awakening. So we're jumping way up, as you saw in the textbook there, Chapter 4, with Ryan Azevedo, who's going to make a presentation there. So we've got, I think Ryan's 40 minutes, Josh here's a little over 30, 35 minutes, so we better get at it. Let me lead us in a word of prayer. Father, thank you for this day. We thank you for the work that you're doing in our lives. We praise you for these in history that you use to influence others. Lord, help us to understand the times that they're in, but also the times that we're in. We need to communicate the gospel afresh, not change the truth, but change the methods so that we relate to the times that we're at. So, Father, help us to understand what went on there, that we might apply it in ways in our lives too. For Jesus' sake, amen. Amen. Next week, discussion question 6, and that's going to be over the Methodist revival theology in the Second Awakening and revival theologies among the early American Baptists. So Methodists and Baptists next week. That's Rio Shearer and Matthew Landry are going to make presentations, so we're looking forward to them. Then the next 2 weeks, Adam Rennebarger, John Cottier, and the final week is this gentleman here, Seth Hauer, with Moody, talking to us. So we got just a few weeks left. Let me know any questions you all have about the assignments and the presentations. Let me get Josh going here. We'll listen to the New Divinity.
Hello, my name is Josh Burt. I wanted to kind of introduce myself before we jump into this. I was given, we were recording. And I wanted to introduce myself before we jumped into this. Kind of give you a little history, background on myself. Also why you probably haven't seen much of me recently. The reason behind that is, so I am currently a pastor. I've been a pastor for 7 years. I am a dad. I have a little 3-year-old girl and a little 5-year-old girl. One is in pre-K and one is in kindergarten currently. The first week that we first jumped into, and I was jumping back into this semester, my wife tested positive for COVID, which then led to a 10-day quarantine for her as well as myself. And then because of the school district that we're in, it led to an additional 14-day quarantine for my 2 little girls. And so it pretty much equaled 24 days of quarantine for all of us. But that being said, my life has kind of been a little chaotic in the last 15-ish, 20-ish days. But I'm finally back on quote-unquote track. I was given, during that time, though, a lot of time to read, which is pretty exciting because I was able to read a whole lot about just the New Divinity Movement. I was able to read from my other classes. I had actually never heard of Samuel Hopkins or Joseph Bellamy, which was pretty interesting for me to actually be able to read and dive into these guys and see. I'd heard of Jonathan Edwards, but I'd never really known the guys that he poured into. So, and we're going to get into all that, I promise you. That being said, let's go ahead and just jump right into this. So, let's see, we've kind of started with the Great Awakening and the Enlightenment period. We've talked a little bit about that. I know that there were 3 or 4 presentations before myself, and there's going to be many after this. And this is where we're kind of honing in on all these things. But this new theology or consistent Calvinism, or what's actually called, and I'm going to butcher this name multiple times throughout this because it feels like a made-up word, Hopkinsianism, or something like that, is what this new divinity movement is actually known for, or known as. It goes by many different names. But why was the new divinity movement even started? So during this time, around that turn of around that 1700s, 1750s time, there was a whole lot of turmoil and chaos and multiple different people saying multiple different things about multiple different processes and multiple different theologies kind of all being thrown into each other. You have the Great Awakening, you have the Enlightenment period, and then you have this challenge of free will and this predestination, this Calvinistic predestination, and these two just slamming into one another, which in many ways actually forced a lot of the theologians and a lot of the pastors and a lot of the biblical scholars at the time to really not just sit on the sidelines or be comfortable in their beliefs, but really what it actually did was it encouraged them and forced them to sit down and then defend, like actually understand what they believed and then defend it. So it forced them to defend or to change. And we're going to see that today. We're going to see two guys who really, well, actually, technically, we're going to look at a third one, but it was just an influencer on the two guys that we're going to look at. The two that we're going to look at today are Joseph Bellamy and Samuel Hopkins. But who influenced them was a guy named Jonathan Edwards, and this new divinity movement was actually kind of sprung up through this time. However, Calvinists at the time were forced to either defend free will or change to free will and kind of move into that like way of thinking, or to really hone in and defend predestination and all the Calvinistic viewpoints that kind of followed. And what ended up happening was it broke into, or they landed if you were a theologian during the time or a pastor during the time or a scholar during the time, you would have landed in one of three different areas. Either you would have been a liberal Calvinist, or you would have been an old Calvinist, or you would have been what we're going to talk about today, this new divinity movement, or new Calvinist, as they were called, or consistent Calvinist, or after Hopkins kind of quote unquote took over, Hopkinsianism. So that being said, let's jump right in. But I also want to do one more thing before we really dive into this. I want to go ahead and pray over this time and pray for you guys as you're listening to this. One of the things that I kind of realized as a pastor and just all of these things is, you have your beliefs, and you have those things and you're going to have these things as you're studying these things. And we're going to see this at the very end. In fact, I'm going to answer one of the questions at the very, very end of today, and I'm going to read out of 1 Corinthians just a little bit. But as we jump into this, one thing that I want you guys to just remember, just if you can, just remember as it feels like we're just in a class, but this is not just a class. This is preparing us for the rest of our life and the defense of the gospel. So that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and I want to pray over this time, and I want to pray for you guys. Know that I am praying for you guys, even though you may never have seen me too much. But also, I wanted to go ahead and say I'm going to be answering the questions just throughout this time. So let's go ahead and just jump into prayer. God, thank you so much for giving us this time, this ability, God, to study your word, to see just people throughout time and how they thought about you. God, I pray that our focus can be on you today. I pray that our focus can be on what you wanted us to learn, how you want us to grow in you, God. And as we look at this movement, God, just prepare us for, God, what's going to come next. And I pray these things in your son's name. Amen. Okay, so what actually is the new divinity movement? First off, it rejected this universalist belief that Christ's sacrifice redeemed everyone. What does that mean? So the first thing that this new divinity movement did was that it brought in this kind of new way of thinking that has been actually brought up before in other presentations.
All right, so Ryan, you're saying YouTube's not on?
Yeah, no, I've been checking it. It's still not up for me.
Was it on? It wasn't on.
Yeah, it's not on at all.
All right, let me see where I need to go. It says it's public. and I hit the buttons, it says stop it, so it says it's running. I'm in the right room. Pardon?
Yeah, I'm still not seeing it. I'm not sure why. I'm using the same link I always use.
Yeah. This is room 100. All of a sudden I'm... Let me check that. Is it 101 or 100?
The stream is for 101.
101, that's what I've done wrong then. All right, let me change that. How do I change that? Go back to here. I probably got to sign out and start again.